Hello, everyone. I am going to attempt to pray and lead you in some prayer today for Israel and Gaza. I don't know about you, but I am feeling really emotionally unregulated, really, at the moment. When I hear about, things like war and torture and murder, it elicits a trauma response in me. And I don't know if you can relate to that at all. In my younger years, in my 20s, I worked for a international development charity, and I could hear stories of horrendous things happening, and they didn't seem to affect me. But as I've got older, as I've had kids, more and more the events of the world really seem to impact me personally to a point where I can't really cope with a lot of it, if I'm honest. I don't tend to watch the news. Most news comes to me secondhand via other people, and it affects me nonetheless. So if you can relate to that at all, and you are feeling overwhelmed by some of the things that you've heard, it's not surprising if when we are put in that kind of trauma response that we find it hard to pray, because our bodies are in fight or flight mode. They are feeling unsafe in the world, and they are diverting your resources, including your mental resources, to a state of survival. So it's very hard to think think about things such as prayer when your body is in that state. So for me, this is where art journaling can really help. So I'm not trying to pray with words. I'm not trying to pray from that logical left-hand side of my brain that's got it all figured out. I am coming at it from a different direction. So hopefully you will find this helpful. Hopefully you won't find it frivolous. It's hard to sometimes feel like making art is an appropriate response to some of the things we've been hearing about. But for me, my art is prayer, and we know that prayer does make a difference. Hello, my name is Jenna, and I help people encounter God through mixed media art journaling. So I've got in front of me, I've got a blank sheet of paper. This happens to be tea dyed. It doesn't have to be. You can use any white piece of paper, just a loose sheet of paper, approximately A4 size. And I've got my journal. The reason I've got two options here for us to work on is this side is going to be the place that I dump all my big, difficult feelings, things that I've heard and seen that I wish I hadn't, big questions to God about why is there war and suffering in the world. This is going to be a dumping ground for all that stuff. And this is going to be a collage sheet that we are going to build up over time. And this is going to be the prayer, I guess, the hope. It's going to have Bible verses on it. It's going to have declarations. Towards the end, we are going to use this to add to and cover up some of this. So that's the big picture of what we're doing here. I'm going to start on this side. I'm going to start probably with some scribbling, some mark making, and a little bit of journaling. I don't want to go too much in there with the words. I don't really have the words at this stage in the game, but I'm just going to start expressing myself on this page. I've just got a black pen and a pencil. So don't feel you have to copy me in any way. This is an expressive exercise. You make the kind of marks that feel natural to you, and write down any words that come to you. Remember, as you're doing this, just to take some deep breaths as well. Especially if you're just feeling a bit overwhelmed and upset, which I think a lot of us are. Okay, so I've made a start there. I've written down some of my questions and some of my thoughts. I've made some marks which for me represent the pain and the horror of what is going on. And I have this here. I'm going to keep it here to one side so that I can add to that if I feel like there's anything that comes up for me. I can dump it out onto that page. So we're going to move on now to this sheet, and we're going to play, and that might seem like the most frivolous and inappropriate response to war, but play is a serious business. Play will help us to regulate that nervous system that I was talking about, that is overwhelmed by the trauma and the feeling of helplessness and those big feelings. We can help just calm them down with a little bit of play, and that will lead us into a place where we can then start to hear from God and to bring in some of his word and pray appropriately, hopefully, as best we can. Play doesn't necessarily mean we're joyful. We can play thoughtfully, and this can be an act of mourning even. How in the Old Testament it spoke about people tearing their clothes in response to terrible news. So as we tear our papers, that can be expressing our grief over the situation.
When my mind is like a battlefield and my heart is overcome by fear, and hope seems like a ship that's lost at sea.
Even now, having just added one layer to this page, I am feeling that sense of panic and overwhelm start to settle in me. And I can start to think a little bit more clearly. So some thoughts that came into my head were that God is still on his throne, that ultimately one day Jesus is coming back and there will be no more crying, no more tears, and everything will be as it should be. So those are two kind of truths that just bubbled up in me once I spent a little bit of time just calming myself down with some play. So I'm going to write those truths onto this sheet. Again, I'm just going to use just a black pen.
My enemies on every side, and I'm tempted to run and hide. Your gentle whisper reaches out to me. Peace holds me when I'm broken. Sweet peace that passes understanding.
Right, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to add some gesso to this collage page. If you don't have gesso, then some white paint would be completely fine. Adding white in any form to any page always, for me, symbolizes a kind of cleansing. And here we can think about peace and praying for peace. You can think about peace coming in over the land, inviting it to come into the heart of those who would wage war.
That passes understanding. When the whole wide world is crashing down, I fall to my knees and breathe in your peace.
Just also thinking about my own heart and my own inability really to choose peace for myself, and that Jesus had to do that for me. It's his righteousness, that we exchange our sin, our anger, our unforgiveness and resentment and inability to seek righteousness by ourselves, and we surrender to Jesus, and he comes and washes us clean. He gives us his white coat to wear. And praying that for this war-torn area, let your peace, your righteousness come like a blanket of white over that land. So because I was just talking about righteousness, I'm going to add some Bible verses now related to that. The Lord might be putting other verses on your heart, in which case you go with those. But I thought it'd be really nice to get some scripture on here now.
Fiery arrows whistling, the terror of the night sets in, but I can feel your angels all around. I am resting underneath the shelter of your mighty wings. Your promises are where my hope is found. Oh, my hope, yeah. Peace holds me when I'm broken. Sweet peace that passes understanding. When the whole wide world is crashing down, I fall to my knees and breathe in your peace. I remember who you are. You're the God who's never far. So I will not be afraid.
I've got some green acrylic ink here. I'm going with the green that's on the page, but green always says to me hope, new life, everything good really. It's my favourite colour, if I haven't told you that already. So I'm just creating a patch of colour here, spreading it out like that. Not everywhere, but in areas. I thought I might also try lifting up some of this colour with this stencil. I've got some new stencils. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm just using a baby wipe, or you could just probably just use a tissue. I think the ink's still too wet to do this. Oh, actually, I am getting some marks there. Just giving it a bit of texture, really. using what I've picked up on the baby wipe to push it through the other areas of the stencil too, like that. And as the final layer on our collage paper, I thought we could add some stamping. And I am lucky enough to have a little stamp here that says peace, but I'm guessing not everyone has one of these. So you can stamp with anything really, just even a cardboard tube like this will make some interesting circles. Let's have a go with this. Okay, and let's have a go with this one. Okay. So that's our collage sheet done. Now, if you're short on time and you don't have time for this process of making your own collage sheet, I will scan this in and I'll provide a link so you can download it and print a copy of this one for what we're going to do next. But that was, for me, was a really worthwhile process.